There is no way that he just said this, as Chris Bassitt has broken the silence on the Toronto Blue Jays season as he spoke out about Ross Atkins, about Mark Shapiro, about the players and the coaching staff. So I'm going to break down those comments and discuss how what he said has some Jays fans fired up. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're part of the percentage trying to subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to Peter and myself. And Peter's been super busy with work. He will be back tomorrow. But Chris Bassitt came out very recently and revealed some very intriguing insight on what the Blue Jays are feeling within the clubhouse, within the management. And he also spoke out about the fans' perspective and called out the fans a little bit, speaking out about and kind of defending Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro. So I'm going to break down those comments now and buckle up because there's some interesting things he had to say. So Chris Bassitt speaks out on the Blue Jays' internal frustrations. And it's no secret that this year, obviously, the Toronto Blue Jays have been struggling. It's been the year from hell, as me and Peter call it. It's been horrible for the Jays. Luckily, they were able to salvage it a little bit, get some of the young prospects going, and they got a lot of young guys who are starting to play well. And we have some positives to build on heading into next season with, of course, obviously Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Spencer Horwitz, all these guys. But Chris Bassitt was asked, and he said some very interesting things. We'll dive into the comments now. So Bassitt, who's been straightforward and honest with his frustrations this season, said, "You have a lot of so-called pissed-off veterans in the clubhouse, and it's been the worst year of my career." That is Chris Bassitt, ahead of Saturday's 7-2 win behind Berríos' 16th win on a two-hitter, over 7 innings. But he basically said, within the clubhouse, there is a lot of upset veterans. And he's obviously talking about guys like Kevin Gausman, guys like himself, and a lot of the other veterans. Most of the veterans were shipped off at the trade deadline. Kevin Kiermaier, Justin Turner, a lot of those guys. But the pitching staff is still full of veterans. Obviously, José Berríos, Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassitt. So looking at it from his perspective, and he's in the clubhouse every day, and it's not very often that you get starting pitchers of any team, or just players of any team, that is calling out the front office, or in this case, calling out themselves, calling out the fans. He basically said that the Toronto Blue Jays players, their veterans, are not happy at all, and it was the worst season of his career. And you look at the Blue Jays record, you look at how this season has went, and there wasn't really any high points for the Toronto Blue Jays this season. I mean, the highest points have been the prospects at this point shining out, and probably the back-to-back Joey Loperfido, Addison Barger walk-off win at the Rogers Center. That's one of the best points of the season, which happened a few weeks ago. And that's when they were already eliminated, basically, from the playoff race. At this point, they're all but done in the playoff race. It's not going to happen. They're eliminated. But looking at some takeaways, again, we know the young guys have performed well. But if you're a veteran like Chris Bassitt, Kevin Gausman, even José Berríos to a degree, who's going to be with the Blue Jays for the foreseeable future, you have to be very upset with how this season has went. And part of that is on the players. And that's what Chris Bassitt kind of gets into here. I mean, the pitching staff hasn't been phenomenal. They've started to turn around as of late. The hitting was really bad. The defense was okay. And the bullpen's been, and a lot of veterans in the bullpen as well. Obviously, guys like Jordan Romano and earlier Jimmy Garcia was the worst, if not one of the worst, in baseball. And it's very refreshing to hear Chris Bassitt or any player call out themselves and call out the team rather than saying or blaming the game or blaming the fans. Not that that ever happens. But you look at how this kind of transpired, and it started with the bullpen injuries of Jordan Romano. Tim Mesa, who was a veteran, obviously ended up getting DFA'd, now plays for the Yankees. And Ben Nicholson-Smith wrote in a recent article, he said, "Injuries, underperformance, and lack of organizational pitching have all contributed to the struggles." He went on to say that the Blue Jays need better pitchers. The recent waiver wire claims haven't asserted themselves, and the farm system doesn't have a clear answer. So trades and free agent spending will be required, which is going to be the talk of this upcoming offseason, whether that's Juan Soto, whether that's Alex Bregman, whether that's Pete Alonso, Teoscar Hernandez, all these guys the Jays are going to have to spend. But that doesn't address the biggest issue, which is the bullpen, because the bullpen has completely collapsed this season for the Toronto Blue Jays and turned from one of the better bullpens heading into the year to the worst, if not one of the worst, in baseball. And obviously, you can't foresee this happening if you're Ross Atkins. You went in and you figured that the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen was going to be good. Jordan Romano, one of the best closers in baseball, was out most of the year. Obviously, bullpen aside, you had the Bichette injury. Jimmy Garcia turned into a phenomenal pitcher, and he was one of the guys who obviously was shipped off and got a prospect back. But you look at how everything happened, there is obviously some unlucky factors there with injuries, Bichette, Jordan Romano, all these guys, and some really severe underperforming from guys like Tim Mesa and a lot of the hitting staff as well, and the hitters, and even some of the pitchers. But it's nice to see some accountability from the players, and Chris Bassitt did have some more interesting comments. He basically, obviously we know about the pissed off fans and all this thing, or pissed off players that is, but Chris Bassitt on who's to blame for the season, and this is the most telling quote that we've heard all season from any player, and probably one of the most telling quotes we've heard from any player in recent memory in not MLB history, but over the past few years for the Toronto Blue Jays, especially in the past decade. I don't blame Ross Atkins. I sure as heck don't blame team president Mark Shapiro or Schneider, obviously the manager John Schneider. Player accountability is massive, and I think we have that here. It's just for whatever reason, Jays fans don't want to yell at players. They want to yell at Ross. I don't know why. So Chris Bassitt, a veteran who only has 1 year left on his deal after this season, basically called out the Toronto Blue Jays fan base and said, stop blaming Ross Atkins. And all of us, myself included, Peter included, and I'll see a lot of you guys in the comments, calling out Ross Atkins. It's been the biggest kind of storyline is Ross Atkins' inability to build a playoff team. Now, I don't necessarily agree with what Chris Bassitt says here. He's coming to the defense of his management, and he doesn't have too much reason to do so when he only has 1 year left on his deal. And we heard he kind of called out Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro earlier in the year with the Ohtani stuff, saying that they put all the eggs in the Shohei Ohtani basket, and then that obviously they transitioned, they didn't get enough hitters. They got Justin Turner and guys like that, Kevin Kiermaier. But he doesn't blame them all here. Doesn't blame his, he backs up his manager, he backs up Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, and is saying that it is the players' fault and that they have the accountability there, but they don't know why Jays fans want to yell at the players, or don't want to yell at the players, but want to yell at Ross Atkins. And it's an interesting point. I'm sure there is some Jays fans out there that do yell at the players, but when you're looking at it from a fan perspective, I mean, Ross Atkins has been with the team now since 2016, and the Jays have not won a playoff series, especially with this young core. They haven't won a playoff game with this young core. So at some point, Ross Atkins has to be the blame has to be put on him. Obviously, the players are at fault, but players have been switching throughout. He's built a decent team. 2021, obviously, they missed the playoffs. Things were looking up from there. You have a young core. You have one of the best, if not the best, offense in baseball. The pitching staff is young and developing with guys like Alek Manoah, even Nate Pearson at the time. And then he turned one of the best offenses in baseball to one of the worst offenses in baseball by trading Teoscar Hernandez and by not signing guys who could hit well and really shifting to a defensive approach. And I still like the Dalton Varsho trade. I'm not going to blame him for that trade. But the reason, Chris Bassitt, that people and fans are mad at Ross Atkins is because the team that he developed, especially looking back to 2021, he took away one of the best offenses in baseball and really just milked it dry and made the offense now one of the worst offenses in baseball. And he has time. This is probably his last chance to do it last year to really make a competitive team this upcoming offseason. I don't think they're going to fire him before that. But if they don't do that, then things are going to take a turn for the worse. But the players are certainly to blame as well. Underperforming from Bichette. Vladdy did everything he can. A lot of the personnel is to blame as well. So I get his point, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. And you look at the Blue Jays this season, they're 72 and 78. Their offense isn't great. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a severely needed breakout year. Not breakout, because 2021 was a breakout, but his bounce back year after a couple of down years. And as you headed now to the home stretch, the final few games of the season, you really start to put things into perspective with 15, 20 games left of how bad the season has been when our conversation is talking about heavily needing to invest in the bullpen, calling out the Ross Atkins and Chris Bassitt coming to defend Ross Atkins. It gets very interesting and something that was going to be a big storyline heading forward. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Do you agree with Chris Bassitt's comments, or do you agree with me and some other fans that I think both of them are to blame? Let us know. We'll see you soon.